All right, I think we'll get started. It's 11:01. So first off, thanks again for everyone that attended. Again, quick introduction. So Brandon Van Cleve, Vice President here at Pine Cove Consulting. We have Kate Swistowitz, who's our Director of Service Delivery, and we have Steve Petrashuk with AVIC. So kind of the goal of the meeting today, I'm going to talk for just two slides here to do some introductions. But I think from my side, and really the non-technical side, is why we're all here is, Pine Cove, if you don't know, we do a lot of remote support and remote solutions for our customers. And we really were in dire need of finding a way to provide better visibility and easier management for our team to dive in and figure out what's going on with our networks. And so that's kind of why we're here. We found AVIC, and AVIC's made our lives a ton easier. It's made our customers a ton easier. And for those of you that work with us or are familiar with us, we work in a variety of different ways. So, some of our customers just have us manage this whole thing, and we just take the network management bull by the horns and just do it. Other places, we give the keys to the castle and share those resources with the network admin. So as you're looking at this is certainly a tool that we can use to take care of things for our customers. But this is also something that we can help empower you with, and you can take and run with. So you can kind of think of it two ways. Steve, go ahead and kick to the next slide. So for those of you unfamiliar with Pine Cove, so we're actually hitting our 27th year in business. We started this business in '93 in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and basically evolved it around servicing the underserved. So school districts, businesses, city, county government, anyone that needed some higher level expertise in managing their networks and their security and all those different things. We service about 20,000 users a day. So we have a wide array of scenarios that we see, user experiences. So we kind of joke around. We've been in business for 27 years. We support 20,000 users a day. We've gotten our butts kicked a lot. We know a lot of things not to do. We've seen a lot of things. So we just have a lot of experience in how to manage these complex environments. We partnered with AVIC in 2018, and kind of like I said, we specialize in solving complex issues. So whether it's management of your IT, your security projects, complex projects where you need a team to come on and knock it out of the park, that's what we do day in and day out. You can go to the next slide, Steve. And this is my last slide. So this is just kind of our process that we do. Every customer uses this a little differently. So some people start and stop with different parts of this. But kind of our whole process with our customers is to come in and analyze what you're doing. What are your goals, objectives as an organization? How can we design solutions to, resolve that and answer the bell for those objectives you have? And then we can go in and deploy the solutions and the tools that we need to make it successful. Can spin up that support component of that, and then help you sustain it and create some sustainability plans and budgeting plans, and really be an arm of your IT offering. So that's really my side, just to kind of kick it off and say kind of why we're here. And now we'll let the smart people talk. But maybe one more housekeeping thing. You'll see a questions tab in the interface of the GoToMeetings. We want this to be engaging. So at the end of the presentation, I'll take those questions and we'll kind of serve them up to Kate and Steve and see if they can answer those. But please put that in there. The more questions in there, the more engaging this is, and then we know we're getting the content that you want to hear regarding this topic. So plug those in there, and I'll get to them at the end. And I'll kick it over to Steve.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Brendan. Much appreciated. I will kick over the slide here. And as I'm sort of looking around, I have 3 screens in front of me. So if I'm not always looking directly in the camera at you, know that I'm still paying attention here. It's just a lot going on here in the work from home offices. So quick introduction on who AVIC is. We are cloud-based network monitoring and management. So what that means is we've taken sort of the old school concepts of helping to manage a network, and we've brought it into the 21st century, helping to do that from a cloud-based platform. We are headquartered in Waterloo, Canada. So I know typically if I say Waterloo, a lot of people think Iowa, but unfortunately we're not Midwest. We are sort of based out of Southern Canada here. I like to say we're Canadian A, sort of fit the stereotype. I always like to sort of lead with a piece of trivia as well. So if you look in the bottom side of the slide here, there's this little polar bear. His name is Nanook. He's sort of our company mascot. Um, but his name is really simple. All Nanook basically means is polar bear in the Inuit language. So if you're ever looking for a piece of trivia and get that on a Friday night and someone asks, well, what is the name of a polar bear in the Inuit language? It is Nanook. So there you go, learn something new today. So who am I? Brendan introduced me earlier. I lead what we call our systems engineering team here at Avik. So that's a mix of pre and post sales support. So helping all of our account managers and post-sale success managers help manage our partner and client relationships. Also lead our technical training program as well. So if you are an Avik partner customer and you're taking any of our training programs, that's my team that leads that as well. I've been with Avik for about 4 years, 4.5 years now. So seen a lot of stuff over that time. Perfect. So digging in, what we're basically going to cover today, I don't want to spend the whole time sort of chatting through slides because obviously we want to dive into the product a bit, but just to help set the stage, I like to go through a couple of things just so we're all on the same page as we start to dive in and understand, well, what can Avik help you guys do for your environments. And I'll sort of start with this. Everything that you do today has either moved to the cloud or will eventually move to the cloud, right? The whole idea that we keep everything on premise and we need to manage all of our infrastructure in some specialized verticals, that may still be the case indefinitely. But I think overall, if you haven't seen it yet, you will see it more and more, that everything that you need to sort of run your business, run your school, run your government agency, all those kind of things, they're all moving to the cloud, right? And what those applications are will vary vertical to vertical, but different line of business applications are all moving to cloud-based services. And what that means is that basically the network that we all connect to has now become this important conduit to allow us to access all these resources that we need to be able to do our jobs. So think back, a few years ago, I had a Word document on my computer. I can edit that Word document. I can save it. When I'm done, I open up my email client and send it off. Not quite the case anymore, right? I open up my, G Suite docs, or I open up my Office 365 Word doc, and I'm, updating that in real time, maybe collaborating with others. But the idea that I need to be connected to be able to do that is pretty important, right? And if this network goes down, like if this critical link is no longer connecting me to the resources I need to access, my productivity stops, right? This connection to the cloud is now everything that I need to do my job. I think about it like the gopher effect, right? Like if the internet goes down somewhere, you see a whole bunch of heads popping up over the cubicles, or from the desks in the classrooms, and hey, is your network down? Is your internet working? And for the most part, we're all sort of lost if we can't connect. I would say it's even more true in the world that we're experiencing here today. I was just sharing before we started that I've had my internet at my house here go out a couple of times this morning, and during that time, it's like, oh my God, I'm not productive, right? I've just stopped. So we're totally reliant on this network to connect me to all the assets and resources that I need to be productive at my job. And so that's really what this next slide is all about, right? If that network fails, if that critical link that is connecting us to the outside world stops, we get frustrated. My productivity grinds to a halt. The entire user base can be affected. And where do sort of people turn and look? It's sort of to the IT professional, right? No one calls when it says, hey, my network's working, everything's great, right? They only call when there's problems. And when the network fails, those are some of the more complex problems to solve, and you're getting the call, you're under pressure, you're trying to get it fixed. But ultimately that takes time. And during this time, everyone else is sort of getting frustrated and productive. So what we basically want to do is avoid that, right? We want to, sort of lead the way and make sure that we always have a stable, reliable connection, be it to the external world, to my internal resources. And that's the whole idea of being a little bit more proactive on the network side to make sure that we're maintaining a reliable, healthy connection so that our users can all be as productive as they can be. And so that's where Avik comes in, right? That's where we have built our platform to help our customers basically manage the network infrastructure in a more proactive way, in a more scalable way, where you don't have to be doing a number of traditionally manual tasks, and to allow someone who may not have as much network expertise to get a lot more visibility into network problems in a much quicker and more efficient way. So how do we do that? I'll sort of run through how we do that up front, and then we'll dive into the product a little bit to sort of see it in action. So first is a deep understanding of the network, right? So it's understanding what's out there, what's connected. So with Auvik, what we're basically going to do is give you an accurate map of the network, show you everything that's been sort of connected in there, things that have been hidden away, the switches underneath the desk that someone forgot about, where they just needed an extra Ethernet port and they popped it under there. We're going to profile all those devices. Anything that's manageable, we'll find, make, model, serial numbers to help you identify things that might be out of date, things that might need firmware updates, and sort of give you full lists of everything that's connected to the network. And it's all in real time, right? So this isn't something that I run once and then forget about. It's something that we're always updating because discovery isn't a one-time thing. It's something that always needs to happen. We always need to know when there are new devices connected to the network. So next is about monitoring of the network, right? So once we have that discovery, we've gone out there and we've discovered every asset that's connected, we've identified what they are, we want to make sure that they're all up and performing to best practices. So, without getting too deep into technical weeds, if there's a bunch of, performance errors, or if there's devices going up and down or access points rebooting, you need to know about that, and you need to know about it hopefully before your users. And so you're already on top of that and sort of responding to that before they start calling in. So with Auvik, we're going to automatically start to monitor a lot of those things based on network best practices. So we're going to track usage and health stats on the network. You can see it in real time. You can go back to historical data up to 10 years in the past. So I'm not sure what my network looked like 10 years ago, but if I wanted to, I could take a look at that. And so it's a lot of that historical data so you can spot trends and do forecasting into the future as well. And so all that information is always at the pulse, or always at the tip of your fingers. Next is going to be when things do go wrong, how do we make sure that we resolve them as quickly as possible, right? So it's looking at device configurations to make sure that we always have up-to-date configurations. If a configuration has changed, we know exactly what has changed, so we're not trying to figure out, well, what change led to this disconnect. We'll have that visibility immediately. It's making sure that anytime I'm doing network upgrades or making recommendations on changes, that I have the context of the entire network, have that full visibility so that I can make the right recommendation. And so it's that combination of sort of the performance and troubleshooting capabilities, along with some of the remote management capabilities and configuration management capabilities that allow me to very quickly resolve problems and improve the stability of the network. So we'll dive into how that works in a couple minutes because it's fun stuff, at least for me. And the last thing I'll sort of hit on is off-site device management. So one of the big things that sort of Brendan led with early on is that they've leveraged Auvik because one of the things that it allows them to do is manage clients' networks from afar, right? So from not having to be right on site. And this is true whether it's something that you're leveraging Auvik as a tool directly, or whether you're partnering with Pinecove to actually have them manage your network infrastructure for you. I can basically log in and make configuration changes on switches or make configuration changes on firewalls right from the comfort of my own browser, right? I don't have to have special software. I don't need to make VPN connections or use jump servers to access devices. But basically, we're able to connect these remote devices. I like to say, I can do it from a beach in Florida if I want, although I don't think we're all traveling too much right now. So that's it, right? Like that's the core of how Auvik can help you. Obviously, looking at it and in a couple of slides and seeing it for real are two different things. So let's dive in and actually take a look at how some of these things would look within Auvik. So I will transition my screen here, and maybe Kate, if you can just give me a head nod that you see the right screen there. So perfect. Awesome. So this is sort of the network dashboard within Auvik, where I like to start off the conversations. And what we're looking at here is a live topology view, as we talked about earlier, of a network. In this case, it's the Office network back at Auvik that shows me exactly how everything is connected and configured. So when I start any sort of network troubleshooting, it all starts right here, right? I can quickly and easily find specific devices. I can see exactly how they're connected back into the network, what port they're connected on, how they've negotiated, and what VLANs they're on. So when I start to troubleshoot individual device issues, I have quick visibility into where people are connected and how devices are configured. I can also leverage this topology map to start asking questions of the network, like if I'm doing any configuration changes or making adding devices to the network, adding a switch, and I want to see where certain networks are used, right? I can highlight and overlay logical topology on top of the physical, see where things like this lab VLAN is configured, or if I want to just highlight we have a wireless VLAN here in our network or a wired VLAN, I can see which devices are configured with this, see that there's probably some isolated devices over here that have this VLAN 40 configured, but they're not actually connected to another device with that. So I might have a network disconnect. And so these things allow me to visualize these sort of lower level network protocols without necessarily having to jump into a whole bunch of command lines and map it all out in my head. It's all live and up to date. So the map is sort of the most powerful tool that I use, both from a troubleshooting and network planning, because it's all showing me the live up-to-date topology here right in front of my eyes. Kate, anything you want to share about the map, how you guys have used it in a specific way? I realize I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
No, the thing that I dialed into right away when I first started with Aavik was being able to search for a device's IP address and then use the filter function, and then I could find that device quickly, and then I could see all of the information about it. And for me, most importantly, was figuring out which switch port it was plugged into. So I'm sure that I'm the only person who's ever had a camera installer install a bunch of IP cameras, but not document what switch ports they're plugged into, so that when they go offline, you can't find them. I'm sure that only ever happens to me, but that was honestly the first thing that I remember the light bulb going off on me when I saw Aavik. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, I would say it's very common that during the initial sort of first deployment, I'm doing the initial discovery. Most people who roll it out say, "Oh, I didn't realize that was there," or "That's something that I thought was offline." It's a very common piece of feedback that we get where people discover things that they didn't know existed or should have been taken offline quite a while ago. So let's, I guess, dive down into some of the more device specifics that we get. So obviously the topology map is my starting point, but when it comes to troubleshooting network issues, it's a lot of the rich performance data that we're tracking that really helps me get to the root cause a lot quicker. So I mentioned earlier that we're going to sort of do a deep dive and profile devices and start to monitor them. So here I'll pick on my SonicWall, but keep in mind that we are a vendor agnostic platform. So, basically, it doesn't matter what sort of network infrastructure you're using, we're going to be able to monitor it. And it's good for heterogeneous environments as well, where you do have multiple vendors, because obviously they don't always talk to each other. So if I jump into sort of my SonicWall dashboard here, I'm getting firmware versions and IP addresses and serial numbers. So I have that inventory that I can then take back if I need to make sure that all my devices are up to date on their maintenance agreements or software versions. I know everything that's out there. And we're going to automatically monitor a number of these devices for a few key performance metrics. So here's things like device bandwidth or CPU and memory utilization. So if I start to see the CPU increase on a firewall, that's now the bottleneck, to people accessing cloud resources. And if the CPU starts spiking or the device bandwidth is maxed out, that's going to have a direct impact on my users. So I can quickly see this kind of information, right? It's all there sort of in one screen right in front of me. If I want to dive deeper into this, I can, right? I can dive directly into individual interfaces. So we'll take a full interface list on every switch and firewall. And here I can sort of take a direct look at an interface to see, well, how is it performing? Or look and see if there's things like packet loss, like discards and errors. So these are lower level network issues that aren't necessarily something I would look at in the past, but here, because it's being displayed to me, I can identify whether we're seeing a ton of packet loss on an interface that would result in things like slow web page loads or not able to connect, or interfaces connected at speeds where they are slower speeds than they should be. So all those things sort of pop up right here on that interface dashboard. If we were to sort of extend out that troubleshooting example, if I'm working through a use case where I have someone saying, hey, the network's slow or the internet's slow, and I identify that the bandwidth is maxed out, that someone's utilizing too much of the bandwidth, I can actually pivot into our traffic insights data, which gives me visibility into not just how much traffic is flowing, but who is doing it and where are they going, right? So it goes beyond just the how much to identify specific users and applications. And this is where sort of leveraging NetFlow data, we can get a lot of rich information into how the network is being used to start to troubleshoot things a little more granularly. So if we look here, for example, I can see what sorts of applications are in use, whether it's all encrypted web traffic or if there's other services running. Each one of these categories, I can drill into deeper subcategories. And here I can see there's a bunch of traffic going to Apple. So maybe this is a good thing. Maybe it's not. I'm not sure, right? I need to dive a little bit deeper. And so I can start to pivot on that data to understand how, who is going to Apple and if it is a business critical function. So I can use this top end view to start to see, well, what exact end users are accessing sort of these Apple resources. And I'm picking on Apple here. It could be sort of any other application. And there are a few endpoints that are sort of accessing Apple servers. We happen to be a Mac shop. It was probably a whole bunch of laptops being updated. Okay, not a big deal, but good to get that kind of visibility. And if these kind of things are happening during the business day and they're impacting network performance, maybe we can start to make decisions to move that update outside of business hours or outside of normal use hours. I would say I see this a lot over sort of lunch hours in different organizations. There'll be a spike in the amount of traffic going to YouTube or Netflix, right? People taking a lunch break. You can get that kind of visibility and start to say, well, maybe we shouldn't do that over the lunch hour because it is maxing out our network bandwidth. So that's sort of the first use case that I find for traffic insights is starting to dive down into, hey, things are slow, things are busy. Who is it? What are they doing? And then is it business critical? And we'll come back to traffic insights probably in a couple minutes to talk about a different use case as well. Did want to pivot as well on the device dashboard here. We were talking about performance monitoring. The other thing we talked about as part of the network management equation was actually documenting and backing up network devices. So as part of the Auvik value prop, we do sort of a zero-touch configuration backup without having to go in and back up the network device configurations all the time. We're going to automatically be doing that. So if for a lot of end users, they may not be backing up all network devices, which sort of leaves a bit of a risk exposed there if you're not backing up network infrastructure. But if you are, it's often a manual task. Typically happens when someone initiates a change or possibly on a regular basis. But either way, those are sort of prone to error, where if I'm doing it on a monthly or quarterly basis, it's something that has to be initiated by the end user, and it takes me time every time I do it. And so that ultimately I don't want to be doing over the long run, right? I want to just be automated. I don't want to have to spend my days just logging in and running a backup command. And if it's something that I just do and I make a change, we're all human, we forget sometimes. So being able to have this automated allows you to sort of take the risk out of human error. So here, for example, you can see there was a change made, late last night on this device. I can go in and do a comparison to previous versions. This was automatically backed up, nothing that I had to do. And I can start to highlight exactly what changed through these two files and understand whether it's something that is sort of a critical change, whether it is something that could be affecting network device connectivity or performance, or if this happened, I said it was last night at 9:50, is that a regular change window for us? And if it's not, why is someone in there making changes at 9:50, right? I can start to identify if there are, potentially people making changes that they shouldn't be through the configuration backups. Kate, anything you want to build on with that side?
Just the being able to compare the two. I know lots of times we'll make changes and switches to turn off or turn on a port, change a VLAN one way or the other, and it might be 6 months or 9 months down the road, and you're like, oh, what did I do for this problem before? And this is a quick and easy way to be able to compare the configurations from what you've got right now versus what you had 6 months ago. And then the other thing that I really appreciate is being able to quickly export that configuration, and it just pops it into a text file, and I can save it on my network somewhere, so I have a physical copy, not a physical copy, a copy of the configuration.
Yeah, an offline copy. Yep.
An offline copy. Thank you. An offline copy that I've got just in case, just makes me feel better. And I can do that pretty easily as I go through my switches. Just boom, 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 hit the export and have them all exported, as opposed to logging into Telnet or logging into PuTTY, copying and pasting and all of that. That just is a quick export.
Yeah, exactly. So we definitely have a lot of end users who will do the export here and sort of take that offline copy. And if you get into a situation where a device is you have a power supply fail or something, you just can't sort of light it back up, or it's totally offline, doing that export will also allow you to sort of carry that configuration and re-import it to the device. But for other configurations, that if the device is still up and it's still communicating, it's just a minor change that you made, we actually do have a restore configuration directly within the UI as well that I can initiate. It is provided the device does support that capability. So we'll basically just restore a previous configuration, which is pretty handy. Cool. So I mentioned earlier as well, like say we get to this point and there's a configuration change that needs to be made, or something that was made that needs to be reverted, and I'm not doing that restore from here, I need to make more changes. We can remotely access and remotely manage the devices directly from within the UI here as well. So this is great if you're off site somewhere, or if you're, I know we never do this, we're never off on personal time and have to do work stuff, right? It never happens. But if I just, all I have in front of me is a browser and I need to be able to remotely access a device, I can do that from directly within here. And I can start to manage that just by sort of clicking this remote browser. It's gonna pop up this screen, and now I'm accessing the device from the inside without having to open up these ports to the outside world. I can manage that remotely. Same thing for something via a terminal session. So if you have devices that are managed via SSH, we can also connect here as well. And my password here didn't show up, so 1 second as I find it. Huh. Well, it's got to be one demo fail, right? It always happens. All right. So we're able to remotely manage those devices and sort of get you to the device, make the changes you need to make, and back to sort of doing what you want to be doing, which isn't sort of managing the network. So I mentioned we'd come back to Traffic Insights, so I'll pivot over there for a second just to talk about a couple of other use cases that people have found in gathering this NetFlow data. So first was helping to troubleshoot network performance issues. So when things are slow, trying to figure out what that spike in traffic is and start to drill down. Another way that a lot of our end users are starting to use it is getting visibility into applications that maybe shouldn't be used. So I like to pick on services like Dropbox or other file share services. You can see that I don't actually have any through my network here over the past 2 days. But typically, if we dive down here into file transfer services, we'll see things like Dropbox in use, or other services. I mentioned things like Netflix and YouTube earlier. So if people are accessing these resources that they shouldn't be, we can start to get visibility into what those applications are. And then again, pivoting into this top end view, see what internal users are doing that and whether it is something that they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. It's a great opportunity to highlight areas of potential risk if people are using applications that aren't on sort of the approved vendor list or approved service list. So you can start to get that visibility as well. And then sort of the third key use case is just starting to get some visibility into where people are talking external to the network. So it's, we're all in an interconnected world these days. I'm not surprised to see that there is, traffic going to places like, without naming names, things on this area of the world. It's going to happen, but understanding what that traffic is, and if I should be concerned about it, is definitely an important question to ask. So I can start to drill into some of these to see, where is traffic going to. If it's all sort of going to, or everything's coming from Germany as an example, I can dive into who is it that's talking to Germany, what devices are reaching out to Germany, what applications are they using. You see here, there looks like Bitdefender, which is an application we use, is hosted in Germany. And so I can see those applications here as well, sort of see that usage. So if there is a specific country of concern or a sanctioned country that you don't want to be talking to, before you get to the point of geo restrictions on the firewall, you can see, well, what resources are accessing those networks. So definitely good for visibility into that as well. Kate, anything you want to add to the Traffic Insight stuff?
The thing that we've used it in the past with is narrowing down to a particular client on our internal network and then seeing all of the different places that they go.
Sure.
based on time. And I like the little slider down at the bottom where I can just quickly grab a section of time and then it expands and filters for me automatically. That has been really helpful to narrow down, especially when someone says, well, at 7 o'clock this morning, I couldn't log into blah, 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 blah. And of course, it's 10 o'clock and everything works now, and you didn't know about it until way after the fact. This allows us to go back and see, filter for just that device at that time frame in a dashboard that isn't a log file. And I think we've all had wonderful wasted hours of trying to figure out what's in a log file, and this dashboard is much easier to navigate and try to analyze and at least kind of get some information out of it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I often forget about that use case to, what is a specific device or resource doing, right? Just sort of see all the different other assets that they're talking to and what else internally and externally to the network might they be communicating with. So definitely a good one to bring up here as well. Cool. So diving back into the core platform, a lot of what we talked about before was knowing before the end user, right? So before you sort of get a whole bunch of calls saying, hey, the network's down, you want to know that something's wrong and then start to resolve it quickly. So there are a number of pre-built alerts that come with the platform. So that's one of the things that a lot of our partners and end users really get a lot of benefit from. You can come in and build your own as well, but a lot of the things you'd want to be monitoring are already pre-set up out of the box. So you're not spending a ton of time setting up the monitoring platform. So things like network devices going offline, that's something that would come pre-configured. If we're not able to reach a device for, I think it's 75 seconds, you'll get that alert, and all that stuff is customizable and tunable. But those are all things that come pre-configured, or things like low-level network alerts, like broadcast storms or spanning tree changes. Those type things as well are triggered out of the box. And each one of these has to sort of support you if you're a little bit newer to networking, has KB articles associated with it, knowledge base articles that allow you to dive a little bit deeper into, well, what does this high broadcast traffic alert mean and what do I do about it? One of the, I would say, newest things that's become pretty useful for a lot of our end users is our SSL VPN monitoring. So very quickly after the sort of all the work from home and shelter in place restrictions came in place, we realized that the number of users that are remotely accessing networks has skyrocketed. So getting some visibility into how people are remotely connecting back into the network has been pretty important. There's been license counts that have had to increase. There's been devices that are hitting performance limits just because there's too many users connecting. So we have some monitoring here for SSL VPN out of the box, and as well we can alert on those as well. So if we were to scroll down here to a specific device, let's see, within the last week if we've gotten any users, we should have. Given that this is a lab, we do have a few people that log in here. So you can see a few different times from hitting one user on my SSL VPN. Not a huge concern because it's not really heavily utilized, but in a lot of other environments, we've been seeing tens and hundreds of users that have started to affect performance back at home office there. So a lot of alerts that sort of come pre-configured. You can customize them as well to your needs, however you sort of see fit. We find a lot of partners are finding them very useful. I'm not sure how much in the way of Cisco stuff that you guys see out in the wild these days, but we also have a hardware lifecycle capability. So being able to identify which devices out there in the network might be behind on their recommended software versions or might not be covered by support contracts. So when it comes to SmartNet renewal time, as an example, if we have to go out there and update a whole bunch of contracts, getting some visibility into what things I should be renewing, what things I should be taking off my network. Looking here in this lab environment, some devices from 2015, 2016 no longer supported. Hey, those should be coming out, right? We need to take some action on that. So getting visibility into when devices were deployed, if they need to be updated, if they're sort of end of maintenance, definitely useful. Cool. I'm just trying to think. Kate, was there anything else that you wanted to cover? I've sort of highlighted a lot of the key use cases that I like to highlight. Yeah.
Sure, I've had a couple thoughts. So I know it's probably not something that we would want to do right now because it's a big network, but the ability to export the dashboard. And when you look at that spreadsheet, there's so many different tabs, but the one that I find, I've used it a couple different times. So I can search by a VLAN or filter in the spreadsheet by a particular VLAN, and I can see all of the switch ports across all of my switches that are configured with that particular VLAN, which is really helpful to make sure that I have all of my uplinks tagged appropriately and I didn't miss one if we're doing a big network change around. And then the sheet, and I don't remember which one it is, that shows me all of my switches, their firmware, their uptime, all of that. That's been super helpful when we've helped some customers out with security audits, and you know, they want to know, well, are all of the network devices, if their firmware is up to date? And this is a way that we can quickly produce that information and either preemptively check firmware versions and make changes ahead of time before the audit visit, or at least be able to quickly pull it up for the auditor on site and say, well, this is what we have. We know we've got some changes that we need to make, but at least we know. Serial numbers, that's been super helpful. I don't have to log into each switch or device and pull a serial number. I can pull it straight from the spreadsheet. Those kinds of documentation things I've used quite a bit in quite a few different scenarios with different customers.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, we oftentimes, so I like to, as much as possible, you know, like, let's look at the live network, the live topology, but there are some times where we need to sort of take that offline snapshot, right? Whether, like you said, it's for an audit or a specific network assessment or a specific piece of documentation. So anytime I'm looking for the most up-to-date data, I'm going to be looking within the, the core platform here, but then obviously if I need to take that offline backup, it's all there. So yeah, that's great.
Brandon, did you have a question from a participant?
Yeah, so a couple different ones you almost maybe could answer in a single question. So 2 questions around like custom alerting and maybe some examples. One question was on offline server, other was, uplinks. Can you maybe show some of those, whether it's a particular example or just some of the key features to the custom alerting people can set up?
Yeah, so if we were to, I guess, focus in on customizing some alerts. So one of the things you mentioned was server offline. So that is something that would be sort of one of these default alerts. We have this infrastructure device offline that covers, servers in this case. What we basically do in this case is we would trigger the alert if the server is not reachable, and we would then send an alert either via email or via some other integration platform that you want it to integrate to. If you use things like Microsoft Teams or Slack, you can have those hit those inboxes directly as well into specific channels. I know here at Auvik we have an alerts channel that will basically tell me if any of our lab devices go down or if someone makes configuration changes. That way, if I'm trying to troubleshoot something, I know what's sort of changing in the network. As well, if I want to customize what it sort of means for something to be up or down, I can do that as well. So we have what we basically call our health check frequencies that are here under the discovery settings that allow me to define for different devices what it means to sort of be online and how often to check the device. So sort of like not all devices are equal, right? Different things behave differently. So for something like a network device, I want to be a little bit more aggressive when I reach out and sort of ping it to say, hey, are you still up? Hey, are you still up? I'm probably going to do that. In this case, it's every 10 seconds that I'm going to do that versus for something that's a little bit less sensitive, like an access point, I'm going to be, reach out to it a little bit less often. So I can tune and customize what some of these thresholds are so that, you're getting the most actionable alerts. For something like a throughput or utilization alert that you mentioned as well, we do have, there is a interface utilization alert that comes pre-configured that basically tells me when things get busy, right? When it's greater than 80% utilized. And that's sort of the global default, but there might be other interfaces that I'm more concerned about that I want to know when they're more than 20 or 30% utilized, especially true on devices or interfaces connected to critical assets. If it's connected to a server that everyone's accessing, or if you have a remote desktop kind of server, you'd want to monitor those ones a little more closely. So you can customize these thresholds, just say dropping that trigger condition down to 50 here, and then that would, if it's greater than 50% on any device, you'll start to see that impacted or that alert trigger. So you can either do it globally or on a specific interface as well. So
I know one of the custom alerts that we've set up for customers, he had 2 schools that were about a couple miles apart, and they were connected by a single mode fiber uplink. And it was right along a construction path, so that they were, Wyoming DOT was redoing the road. And so we set up a custom alert on each interface, the end, the uplink on each end between the one school and the other school. And anytime that interface went down, that the alert was emailed to the maintenance guy, the tech director, and the business manager. And that way, between those 3, they could go out and do a physical check on the construction site to see if the fiber had gotten cut. And then we turned the alert off after the construction project was over because it wasn't nearly as critical. But that was something that was super helpful during construction because it went down a lot.
right.
And it was great for the construction company to know right away, hey, you just cut our fiber, because then they could go exactly to whatever worker was on the backhoe and be like, stop what you're doing right now because something went down. So that was a really nice use of some custom alerts.
I'm just building this out now as you're talking about, just to sort of emphasize, like, that sounds like a big endeavor, but really it's pretty easy to get those kind of alerts set up because we have all that inventory here. So it makes it really nice. I don't have to worry about logging into the devices or, if anyone's familiar with SNMP, there's all those OID things you have to deal with. Here we don't really have to, right? We've abstracted that away. So yeah, it's a good use case.
I had another question on being able to search or filter by device type. Can you show kind of how that works?
Sure. So there's some pre-built filters that come right in. So the first one I'll sort of highlight is just this network elements only kind of filter on the map, at least, that will just show me things like, in this case, it's switches, routers, firewalls, access points. If I want to apply that just to switches, I could do that as well, just by selecting device type switch, apply that as a filter. Cool. And we'll have that map update to only show me the switches here in the map. So I can absolutely do that from a mapping perspective, but I could also do that on the inventory side. So if it's either inside that Excel file to just pull down the switches, or if I want to do it with the live information as well, I can search for any switches here just in this dashboard and get a list of all my switches and where sort of what their IP addresses are, how they're configured.
Steve, can you show that all of that information is clickable?
Oh yes, so if I wanted to then dive into one of these devices, just clicking on this 3COM switch as an example, so one happens to be the top of the map, and it brings me directly to that device dashboard. So I'll quickly get the context here.
And into the interfaces. This may not be the most informative switch, but yeah, I find this
this will be a much
helpful.
more useful switch. So here, if I dive into the interface view, I can see exactly what is connected into which interface. So if I were just look at so if I look at the operational status, that's interfaces are up. Here we're going to see what is connected into every single interface. So if you're trying to troubleshoot who's connected in where, I quickly see that there's a couple of issues here. I have this interface that's gigabit capable. It's only connected at 100 megs. Another one that's gigabit capable, connected at 100 megs. Why is that? Is the device on the other end only capable? This one I can see, oh, it's a fast E01. Okay, it's only capable of 100 megabits. Fair enough, but there's other interfaces there that would be capable of a faster speed. So why aren't they connected a little bit faster?
And then for devices that don't run SNMP, they show up in the Auvik dashboard as generic devices, but you can edit those. Like I know one customer, their IP cameras don't run SNMP, so I just see them as generic devices, but I can go in and edit them, give them a friendly name, mark them as an IP camera, and then that way I can filter them later for IP cameras.
Yeah, so we're going to do that discovery for generic devices in different ways, right? So if, originally when we first discover something, it comes in as generic, and then we're going to use discovery protocols like SNMP, or we'll use other things like WMI, the Windows file and print sharing protocols, UPnP. So a lot of those things are driving the discovery. And yeah, if we can't learn what a device type is via one of those methods, I can come in and customize that as well. So I have, this is a little server box that is running a little application. It's classified as a generic device. I could easily come in and just mark that as a server or whatever other device type that it might be.
So we've done this in some customers where we'll mark ILO ports, so that we can quickly identify what ILO ports are. So if networks are down or servers are down, we can go in and get those servers turned up. HVAC systems, mark those, because lots of times you're dealing with vendors, their support staff change, they don't always have good documentation, and here you can quickly identify all of your building management kinds of devices. IP phones, change those so that we know so-and-so's IP phone is online or offline. IP cameras, I mentioned. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head, where they may not show up automatically in the discovery process, but if you've got some documentation, you can modify the Aavik dashboard so that when you need to come back to it in 3 months or 6 months down the road, you can quickly identify all of your ILO ports.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Anything else on the questions front?
Not right now.
Okay, cool. So I think if we sort of pivot back to the slides here, there wasn't much left to sort of round out, except if there was sort of any other questions you guys had, or Kate or Brendan, if you want to wrap up.
Yeah, I think maybe just to kind of reiterate from the beginning, okay, really cool technology, right? How do I implement this? And kind of going back to our offerings, if we were to come into a district or a business and manage the network, we're going to use this tool. So if you brought us in to manage that component of your environment, this is one of the tools that's going to help us dig in and resolve major network problems. However, we're also providing this if you only need maybe us on maybe for a deployment or some partial implementation, then you want to be able to run this in your own environment, you can do that as well. So it's really pick your own adventure here of what fits your IT support model, and that can be constantly changing too. Maybe you need us to come in for a while you right the ship, and then you have someone who's going to take that role. We are extremely flexible, and every customer that uses us differently. So it's really where you need us to fill in or this tool. So just kind of keep that in mind. And just to understand, how do I move forward with something like this? This looks great. What does this mean to me? Or you might be saying, that's great, a lot of stuff. I still don't have the capacity to manage this. We will manage it and deploy this, and you can be hands off and do the things you want to be doing. So I just wanted to make sure I cleared that up, is how do you move forward with this? It's really the best way your team can use this tool. And so, you can email sales@PineCC, and we can have that dialogue with you and figure out how this best fits. So yeah, Kate.
Also, we'll do a 30-day demo for anyone who's interested, who may just want to dip their toe in the pool and not commit fully. So we're happy to do 30-day demos, and the pricing, just so people understand, it's per network device, which means it's priced per switch and firewall. So if you have 20 switches and 1 firewall, it would be a monthly cost times 21. If you had 60 switches and 2 firewalls, it would be a monthly cost times 62. You can have as many endpoints, access points, printers, all of the things, but it's priced per switch plus firewall.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll wrap up. This is recorded, so if you feel like you wanted someone to see this that maybe didn't, or you need to share this again, we'll have it out there. We also can do a one-on-one demo. We could set this up as a trial, whatever fits fits your mold. So again, thank you for coming, Steve. Really appreciate the information. That was awesome.
Thanks for having
The
me.
partnership with Avic's been great. And yeah, we'll just be in touch with everybody. Have a good day.
All right, take care, everyone.